vignettes about things that happened, and you know, the night 2 wee old drunk men. I didn't know there was 2 wee old drunk men called Jack and Willie, and nobody told me, and I was only like 18, and I was behind the bar, and I didn't know that they did a press-up competition for a drink, and they just felt like they were 80 years of age, Ian, how? And they used to just drop to the floor and do press-ups, and I'm like, the men are gonna die! Please stop them! And everybody else was like, oh no, that's what they do, it's fine. I'm like, ugh, please stop! Old men, false teeth falling out the whole fucking lot, doing press-ups, and then they would jump to their feet, and whoever won got a whiskey. I never organised this competition. Nobody gave me prior knowledge of it. So there was so much happened that I had no prior knowledge, like you say, the ticks and the things that they did. And there used to be a cat came in at 3 legs. It was called Tripod. I remember all of these things, and it's made me a better writer for not just looking at it and going, oh yeah, that's what happens. Looking at it and going, why is that a thing? And why are they doing that? And I remember my husband came in, he was only 18. And I went, there was 2 really old men dropped to the floor and did a press up. You never warned me. He went, oh yeah, you're right, it's Monday. That's what they did on a Monday. So I think that
a lot of writers out there are probably very jealous that you had that kind of upbringing when you were younger, because it's just a fund of stories. I mean, the number of anecdotes I've got from just hanging around in pubs, which is why I decided that Rebus would be that old school type of cop who would hang around in pubs and have informants. I think that really doesn't happen now with the police. It was dying out 20, 30 years ago. I've
got a great story about a pub, a cop in a pub. When I had the pub in way back in the early 80s, we had a glass fronted door you could see out onto Green Street. And our local police office was Tobago Street Police Office. And they used to get a new policeman, and they would, you know how they play pranks on the new coppers. And I remember once this young policeman came in, and he said to me, you need to give me the bottle of whiskey for the Christmas party. Whole pub just went quiet. We all just looked at him. I was like, sorry? He went, yeah, I'm here to pick up the bottle of whiskey for the policeman's Christmas party. And as he was saying it, his words were petering out, because he felt the atmosphere of the whole pub going, nah, son, that doesn't happen, right? And I'm looking at him, and I had complete empathy with that, because I get pranked on, and I said, see the 2 guys in the car? What I can do is I can get one of the guys here to piss in a bottle, and they will give you that bottle for those 2 guys. And he went, I don't understand. I went, they're making you look like a dick. Nobody in here gets free drink after your story, ever. So they know that you're being pranked. And then the second time, a detective came in, and he had ironed his jeans with a crease in them. I'm like, good Lord. And he came in and he said, I want to buy some drugs. I'm like, yeah, no bother. Went in the back. You know how the sweeteners, you know, the click, click.
Yeah, Hermesitas.
Yeah, click, 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 click. Came out, gave him them, took £20 off him. He went, I'm a police officer. I went, yeah, you've got sweeteners and I've got your 20 quid. Go round to Tobago Street and tell the sergeant how you're going to get it that one. So we had a lot of fun with the coppers. They never really bothered us.
Problem is, you can't make half that stuff up. Fiction has to be realistic, you know. And you grew up in Glasgow. You know that Glasgow is anything but realistic.
Oh God, no, absolutely. My dad built me a skateboard before skateboards were invented, and I used to go about the skateboard and nearly get killed on every road because I wasn't roadworthy or wise. You couldn't tell people in California that a wee man who worked in a steel factory had invented a skateboard in 1966. But yeah, you're right.
I never bothered to patent it. That's the terrible thing.
Just 2 bits of skates aboard. My dad was the right handicraft man. So I have a few questions for you, and I've written them down because I'm clever. Rebus is a curmudgeonly old bastard who drinks too much and has a questionable taste in music. Wouldn't it have been easier to create a fictional character?
He's definitely a fictional character. I knew nobody like him. I mean, I was 23, 24 when I started writing the first book. Mm-hmm. He was 40. He was divorced. I'd not been married. He was very unlike me. So, yeah, but curmudgeonly, as I get older, I'm getting a bit more curmudgeonly. There's no doubt about that. You know, get out of my way, young people. You're not 6 feet away from me. You know, all that kind of stuff. And the taste in music. I mean, in the early books, the first couple of books, he listened to jazz and classical, because I thought that's what cops like him might listen to, guys who sit alone in their room at night. And then a few writers came along. I mean, there was Inspector Morse liked classical music, and then John Harvey's Detective Resnick liked jazz, and I thought, well, Ian, you're getting beaten to a pulp here. So that's when I decided he would like 60s and 70s rock, which was more my sort of thing. And the beauty of that is that a lot of musicians then became fans of the books because they liked all the musical references. And suddenly I found myself as a frustrated rock star. I know there was just a panel about that earlier today here. I suddenly found myself sort of rubbing shoulders with people in the business, in the music business. And that was terrific, because I would love to have been a rock star, but I had no talent at all. The one thing I never wanted to be was a stand-up, Janey, because writers become writers because they are introverted, shy people who live their life inside their heads and like nothing better than to be in a room on their own. And the notion of standing up in front of people, I still remember the first ever event I did. So it would be when my first novel came out, which wasn't a crime novel. It was published by a very small press in Edinburgh, and there's a kind of venue called the Pleasance, which you might know from the Fringe, the Edinburgh Fringe. And they'd booked that, and the three authors whose first novels were coming out all had to get up and talk for 10 minutes. And I was just a gibbering wreck. You know, there was no lessons on how to do this. And you were suddenly standing in front of an audience of strangers, which was bad enough, but friends was even worse. And trying to talk as this other person, is this kind of Jekyll and Hyde thing about being a writer, where suddenly you've got to persona when you go on the road. You've got to, and you soon learn what stories work and what stories don't. But right at the start, I didn't have any stories. There was nothing to tell. So that was trial by fire. But down the years, of course, I can do a good 10 minutes now, Janey, which is a lot of comedians start off trying to get as a good 10 minutes.
A good tight 10.
Yeah, exactly, a good tight 10. And I can even do 20 or 30. In fact, Fred Macaulay had me over at the Stand in Glasgow once for a charity thing he was doing, and I had to do, I think, 15 minutes of comedy.
How did you feel?
Well, I basically did the same two stories I always tell when I'm doing book events, because they're quite funny stories, you know. I said, there's not much I can do in 15 minutes, but I can turn you all into best-selling writers. Just follow these two pieces of advice. And the two pieces of advice were, don't do any research. What was the first one? I can't remember the first one. One was don't do any research, just gets you into trouble. I forget what that one was, but it'll come back to me. But yeah, there's that kind of weird thing about sitting in this room for 6 months writing a book. And then normally when the book is published, you're out touring the world trying to, you're like the Bex Bissell salesman. You remember the Bex Bissell guy who used to come on your door with a suitcase full of mops and
when my father-in-law died, we found 7 Kirby's in the loft. We thought there was 7 men who sold them, went missing with it. But yeah, I hear you. But you keep talking about writing books. I get commissioned last November to write my first ever fiction book, because my first book was an autobiography. And I've managed to convince Hoddit and Stratton, whoever the publishers are, I shouldn't have said that, whoever they are, that I've been very nervous and can't write the book. And you're like, I'm battered through 17 volumes. But I just find it really distracting. But you spoke about music, and it just brought back to my mind. What was the first record you ever bought? Because you mentioned buying records.
The first record I bought was probably the Action Man theme tune. And I bought it, we were at a caravan in St Andrews, and there was a wee shop, a toy shop, and they had this Action Man single. And one side of it was a guy singing the Action Man theme tune. Action Man is here. Yeah, I can still sing it. And the B-side, excitingly, was battle noises. So what you're supposed to do was set up your Action Man or Action Men and have sort of fights with them while playing this 3.5 minutes of battle noises.
I know a few people who would use that for the wrong reasons, but fair play.
Yeah, I know. Like a soundtrack to a Saturday Night Out in Glasgow. But the first proper record, it might have been Double Barrel, Dave and Ansel Collins. It might have been the theme from Shaft. It was something that would have been in the charts that I liked, and I had just about enough money to buy a single down in Kirkcaldy. I've definitely still got the theme from Shaft. I've still got that through in the other room here.
That's a classic though. My first ever. We had a record shop in Shettleston where I was born in Glasgow, and it was 1978, and I had just turned 17, and I'd finally get money of my own because I wasn't behest to my parents who had no money, and I stopped dead in the street because in the window was the big LP cover of Bat Out of Hell with that big roaring cycle, and it just stopped me. And I went in and I said to the guy, can you play a bit of that tape? Because we had radio, so you only got music by happenstance, unless you tuned into Radio Luxembourg, which sometimes coincided with the voice of the Pope breaking in, which was weird when you were a Protestant in Glasgow. But anyway, he played this, and I can still remember the opening bars of Bat Out of Hell and thinking, that is what my life will be, is just following this band around. And nobody had quite heard of them because, you know, it wasn't the internet. People didn't have access to music at your fingertips. So I still love Bat Out of Hell. And then the next week I bought Rumours by Fleetwood Mac. I still have those two actual vinyls in my cupboard.
Vinyls plural? No. That's just not right. Vinyl. We say vinyl, Janey.
Vinyl. Okay, sorry.
I'm having a wee look here. Having a wee look to see. Ian appeared at last year's Isla Book Festival. Is it something you would recommend? The Isla Book Festival is fantastic. I'm slightly out of focus. I don't know what I can do about that. I've been drinking, but that's I'm slightly out of focus. Which brewdog are you on? I'm on, what am I drinking? Punk IPA is what I'm drinking tonight.
I'm on the old Eden Mill.
You're on Eden Mill Gin and Tonics. Lovely stuff. Proper Scottish drinks we're having tonight. Proper Scottish drinks. I'm sure there's a load more questions down there, but I can't see them all.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go on.
Can I ask you one? Last winter, you re-released an old novel from the vaults, Westwind. It comes out this month in paperback. Are you really that strapped for cash?
I shouldn't be laughing because I wrote that question. I gave that question you asked me. No, I mean, I'm not strapped for cash. Thanks for asking, Janey. I'm still working away here. No, it was just, it was weird. It was a book I didn't remember having any love for when it was published, because it was mucked around a lot by various agents and publishers and editors who made me make lots of changes and stuff. And then somebody on the internet, somebody on Twitter, I think, said, I've read that and it's all right. And I just had a copy here. I had one copy and I started reading it. And I mean, it's a bit old fashioned. It's very much of its time. I mean, it was published in 1990, but it was, you know, there was bits of it that I thought were actually really interesting, because the plot revolves around the fact that the American president is becoming isolationist and is pulling American troops out of Europe. And so there's a lot of tension between the UK and America, etc., etc. And I just thought, well, you know, and everybody's paranoid they're being spied on by satellites up in space.
Wow!
And I mean, I don't know where any of that came from. I was living in London and I was in my late 20s. And in fact, I did the research for it by going to Tottenham Library and got my big book of satellites, which was a children's book. And that was my research for satellite technology, because I actually tried the proper science books and they were all too hard. And I got a big roadmap of America. I'd never been to America, so I just got a big roadmap of America, and that was how I did my research. And there was only ever one review of it, bless, when it was published. I think it was in the Independent newspaper, which said a technically exacting look at the science of space shuttles and satellites. And I thought, well, no, pal, that was a kid's book from Tottenham Library.
Reviews, fuck the reviews.
Gallus,
I wanted to ask you, we're raising money for food bank scene. Neither of us comes from a moneyed background. So how hard was it for you to get into your career? And I'll tell you how hard it was for me to get into mine for being because I remember actually living through food poverty, and we are raising money for the Trussell Trust, which is incredibly important. I think so far we've raised this event has raised £14,000. How do you feel about that? I mean, what's your experience growing up as a child? Well, I mean, you know, parents left school at 14, 15. They were working class, council house all their days, never owned a car. Summer holiday, you started saving up for the summer holiday the week after the summer holiday. You know, they'd get the 2 pay packets out on the kitchen table on Friday night and divvy it up. Insurance money, rent money, Christmas money, summer holiday money. My dad had a wee flutter on the pools every week. He never won anything as far as I can make out. A couple of pints on a Saturday night. But it was, you know, I mean, they were both earning, but they weren't earning very much. There wasn't much spare cash around. But I mean, we never went hungry. It's all cliche, working class cliche. We never went hungry. It was all home cooked food. But I was the first, you know, member of my family to go to higher education. I was the weird one. I was the weird one. I had 2 half sisters, both of whom left school 15, 16.
And for some reason, I was kind of brainy enough not to leave. And eventually I had a weird thing when you were in Cardenden at 14 after 2 years of high school. If you were clever, they took you out of the junior high and sent you to the senior high. The junior high would take you up to O grades and then kick you out at 16.
Mm-hmm.
The senior high, you could go into hires and stuff, 17, 18, and then go into uni or college. But that meant getting up early in the morning and getting a bus to Cowdenbeath from Cardenden, and having to wear a uniform.
Wow.
And at the same time, 2/3 of my friends were still stuck in Cardenden. And there's one kid, and I'll never forget, and he was cleverer than me in almost every subject, I would say. And you got marched into the headmaster's office at 14, no parents, no peer group, no nothing. And the headmaster said to you, you're clever enough to go up to Beath, you're going to go up to Beath next year, not stay here. He said to the headmaster, no, I want to stay here with my pals. I don't want to go up to the senior high. And so that kid who was cleverer than me left school at 16, and God knows what happened. You know, probably went to Rosyth Dockyard or something. But it was that moment when a 14-year-old was being asked to decide their future. I thought that was just extraordinary thing to happen.
I left school at 16 on my 16th birthday because I had no shoes. I couldn't go to school because I had no shoes. It was 1977, January, and I was taking 6 O-levels. And I was very bright at school. And I was going to take 6 O-levels. Nobody in my family went to university. My dad did some night school to get into later on. He worked for the Wellcome Foundation in his 40s. But none of us went on to further education. So at 16, I just went, I'm leaving because I need shoes, I need money, I need food. So, but I had lived between the ages of about 12 to 16. My mum and dad split up. My mum was really, really off the rails. She had mental problems. She had emotional problems. She was really out of control with her emotions. And like they did back then, they just went, oh, she's a wee bit mad. We'll just give her Valium tablets and that'll sort everything out. And it meant that I sometimes didn't eat between 12 o'clock that day to 12 o'clock, the free meal at school the next day. So understanding food poverty is something that I know. Annie was just a bit off the charts. You know, she had a lot of problems, and I was the youngest in the family. So by the time I arrived, she was exhausted by it all. You know, she's like, there's another one, and it talks too much. So by that time, she was just like, fuck this. And,
I vividly remember a kid, a tough kid at my school. He lived just around the corner from me, and he was about maybe a year older than me, maybe a couple of years older. And he came up to me at playground one day. This was at primary school, maybe it was at secondary school. And he said, are you finished with that apple? He wanted to run to the apple because he was just starving. That was all he was going to get. And I just thought, and it really stuck with me that this was a kid who was on the surface a hard man, or a prospective hard man, and yet was not getting enough to eat. And it was just an extraordinary thing. And as you say, I think it's a hellish thing that food banks are still with us, and actually more necessary than ever. So thanks to everybody who's bought tickets for this tonight. Over 14 grand raised already for the Trussell Trust.
I remember watching girls at school when they were 13, 14, 15. They were all on diets, reading Jackie magazine, how to be thin. And when they threw food in the bin, I would go in the bin and eat their sandwiches. Because when you're hungry, you're hungry. Mm-hmm. You know, it's your natural instinct to just go. But then I got really clever about finding family members that I could go to and get a bite of food. So yes, everybody at the Trussell Trust, you're doing the right thing. But
and I mean, but your original question was a second part to it, Janey, which was how hard did you find it to get into your chosen profession? Well, I mean, growing up in a coal mining village, I didn't know any writers. I didn't have access to any writers. I think maybe once or twice in high school, a poet would come along and read poems to you and then go away again. And it was only really when I got to uni and got to Edinburgh and started to be mixing with people who also wanted to be writers, actors, musicians, whatever, had big dreams and didn't see anything getting in the way. And I thought, oh, is that allowed? Is that okay if you do that? I remember the first poem I ever wrote, or the first poem I remember writing, was at high school. It was about 16, 17, and I wrote it for a competition run by the Scots Language Society, and it was called Euthanasia, because I was a cheery young chap even then. It was loosely based on my Aunt Janey, but let's not go in there. My parents were reading the Dundee Courier newspaper, which is a paper we got, and they went, is that you? And it was like local lad won second prize, and it was like Ian J. Rankin of Craigmead Terrace, Cavanagh, had won second prize. And I went, oh yeah, I was a bit cringy going, oh my God, yeah, you found me out that I'm writing, when I'm sitting up in my room at night, I'm not doing drugs, I'm actually writing poetry.
Oh, that's a wonderful story.
But I didn't think anybody from my background would really understand that impetus to write.
No, nobody. I don't have anybody. Ashley, my daughter, the first in my family to go to university, and I don't know anybody in my family that did comedy or acted, or we didn't have anybody at all. I have no peer group previously to go, I kent your father well, come on in. I never had that either. I didn't think a woman for the East End of Glasgow who got married young and ran a pub could eventually, but you know what?
So what made you take that step? What was that big step?
It's really weird. My father-in-law, I married into a family of 7 sons. It's a bit like the Von Trapp family, but without the happiness and the singing. And they were all crooks, except for my husband, who was nice. But they were all crooks. And then he died. And then in true Sopranos Shakespearean drama, they decided to all turn on us, me and my husband, because we ran a business well. We had the pub, we did the building, we had Ashley, we never smoked, we never drank, we never done drugs. It was all happening round about us, but we were focused on the business. So the 6 brothers went, do you know what? We could do what they're doing. Let's just take it off them or make them work for us and we'll take the money. They didn't understand business. So they didn't understand that this business wouldn't feed 6 of them. And him and I just looked at each other, and we'd been there 14 years, sank a lot of our own money into this. And then we just looked at each other and we went, come and we'll go. And they're like, what? So we just put Ashley's school uniform into a bag, picked up the cat, because we were living in my father-in-law's house at the time because our building was being renovated. The police came, they found lots of guns and stuff in the house. That wasn't a good feeling either. And then I just said, come and we'll just fucking leave. And he went, yeah. So we literally picked up 2 plastic bags, walked out of the house in Tollcross, and his brothers were like, where are you going? And at that moment, Ian, I realised they didn't have a plan B. They had just this one plan. And I looked at them all and went, I wasn't allowed into the meeting that they had because I've got a vagina. So I looked at them and I went, so you just don't have a plan B? This is your only plan. You're fucked. So we just picked up the bags and we left. And we haven't spoke to them in 27 years. He hasn't spoke to 6 brothers in 27 years. We left. And he said to me in the van that we used for the pub, what do you want to be? And I said, a comedian and a writer. And he went, let's do it. Literally, that's what happened. And I went and did open spots and I started writing, not books, obviously, plays and radio bits. And I was always kind of really confident that I could do it. And plus the fact I knew that his 6 brothers were desperately waiting to see if we failed and came back. And there's fuck all more impetuous than 6 irritating, useless men waiting for you to fail that'll push you on in life. So thank you, boys.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something in that. Once I decided I wanted to be a writer, I didn't want to be a failed writer.
Yeah.
And that was what kept me going, was just that kind of stubbornness. Scott's word for it is being thrown.
Stubbornness, Ian. See, if people had just ignored me, I'd have went away. But I kept doing it and I kept doing it, and I was good at it. And I knew
I got plenty of rejection letters. You soon get used to your rejection letters.
Yeah.
And then when you start publishing books, the books might not be selling very well. I was what was called mid-list eventually, which is like you're selling enough to make a wee profit for the publisher, but not enough for them to get excited about you. And so I was always on the verge of getting dropped, or I was getting dropped, and I was moving on to different publishers. And at some point along the line,
I'm going to interrupt you. Tell me this: when did you know you didn't have to lie awake worrying? Tell me that moment when you knew, fuck it, I've done it.
It was a long way down the road. It was a long way down the road because my wife got married, moved to London. We were there for 4 years, and I was writing and getting published a wee bit. Then we moved to France for 6 years. A couple of kids came along. I was writing full time, but just barely scraping by. We moved back to Scotland in 1996, and we couldn't afford to buy anywhere. We just rented a flat, and my office was a wee cubbyhole with a washing machine and a pulley.
Of course.
That was where, and the same table that I've got here that my laptop's sitting on. This table's been everywhere.
Can I just tell you, see the table that we're on here? This is the table I took from the pub in the Carlton. I've still got that table.
Still works. It still works. It still works.
Carry on.
Anyway, so
Tell
if
me
it's
that moment.
well, I was on tour in America. It might even have been a voucher corner somewhere, and I was staying in some really crappy motel somewhere in the cold Midwest. And I was on the phone back to my wife, and she said, "Oh, your 6 monthly statements come in for your backlist sales. Your books. You get a sales roundup every 6 months." She said, "It's 6 figures." I went, "Oh, there's a mistake." I said, "There's a mistake," and I phoned my agent. And I said to my agent in London, I said, "Look, they've made a mistake with my royalties." And he went, No. What had happened was, because the later Rebus books had become quite successful, people went back and started from book 1. And so suddenly book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which hadn't been at all successful, were suddenly selling in the thousands, if not the tens of thousands.
Oh.
And it was just, you're sitting there in a motel in America thinking, I wish I was back home now. I'd go to the pub. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But do you, I don't know if you do this, but I do this. I still lie awake at night and think the electricity's going to get cut off. I'm not going to have any money. Ashley's going to end up starving and eating out of bins. I still have that imposter syndrome where I still, every single day, Ian, and I don't tell anybody.
We've all got it.
I check my bank account every single day in case it's disappeared. I still go.
I bet, Lee Child probably does it. John Grisham probably does it. Everybody has this imposter syndrome. When I sit down to write a book, I go, this is the time you get found out, Ian.
Yeah.
This is the time everybody goes, wait a minute. We've pulled back the curtain and here's this wee old Wizard guy pulling the levers. You know what I mean? He's not the Wizard of Oz. He's just a wee old guy behind the curtain. And we've got it their whole lives. And the other thing is, and here's something you might agree with, because somebody quoted this. A writer said this in The Guardian, I think even today, and I forget who it was, but they said something like, writers are really, really envious of musicians. And I went, they are, but musicians are really envious of actors, and actors are really envious of artists, and artists are really envious of poets, and poets are really envious of musicians, who are really envious of writers. We all wish we were someone else, but we found something that we're good at.
Yeah, I still get, I'm writing this new book and it's fiction, so it's a big drama for me. And I sold it on a pitch in an office in London and they all cheered and I went, what the fuck did I just say? And how am I going to write that down? But I will get there with it. But I still have that awful feeling that it'll all just disappear. And I think that's a natural insecurity. I'm going to ask you this, and I'm sure you've been asked it before, but I want to hear it from you. If you could have been any rock star, maybe the guy at the back, maybe playing the drums, maybe the person that had the big camera on stage with, if you could have been in any band or close to at any performance, I'll tell you mine. I would like to have been the guy with the Scotland top, with the Adidas trainers, standing with the camera right at Freddie Mercury at Wembley on Live Aid. What would yours be?
I would have wanted to be in the Alex Harvey band, the sensational Alex Harvey band.
Yes.
Because they had everything. They had musical chops. They could all play brilliantly. Yeah. They had a sense of theatre, a sense of vaudeville about them. And yet they were hard, they were tough. You wouldn't want to meet them in a dark alleyway. But at the same time, they were a lot of fun. And one of the greatest gigs I ever went to, they played, I think it was the Odeon in Edinburgh. I was about 16 and I was wearing my black and white stripy top, obviously. You probably can't see it. There's a Alex Harvey mug on the shelf behind me here.
Okay.
And I just loved it. I just thought this is the best thing that's ever happened, to be at this concert. And of course, he died very young. He was in his, I think, early 40s when he died, Alex Harvey. And more than half the band are now no longer with us. But I would love to have been in a big theatrical band like that. The way Bowie was theatrical, and that kind of thing would appeal to me. But I just don't have any talent. I've tried to learn to play piano, guitar, you name it. If I could play any instrument, it wouldn't be a rock instrument, it would be tenor sax, because I'm a huge fan of the tenor sax in jazz. And often when I'm writing a book, I've got music playing in the background. A few of the questions that have been coming up on the Q&A thing here have been about music. They've been about me doing a bit of DJing from time to time, and about Tim Burgess's listening party that he does on Twitter that he's been doing throughout the lockdown, which has been just amazing. The next one they're doing actually is a David Bowie album. It's outside, and they've got Raves Gabriel and Mike Garson, I think, are coming along to talk about it early next week. I love all that. I love music. Yeah. I mean, this wee office of mine, I mean, there's a record, there's a hi-fi system in the corner there that I can listen to when I'm working, and there's a room next door that I go into when I'm not working, which got a huge, ridiculous, fuck-off hi-fi system in it, and a sofa, and nothing but records and CDs. That's it.
I love my music as well. I mean, Ashley can read music and she can play, and she's actually got a really beautiful singing voice, and I'm dead jealous, really jealous of it, because she can pick up most instruments. She'd never be an expert, but she's one of those people, play guitar, play piano, play a recorder, know the flute, because she's not got the right demeanor for that. But she's also a really good singer, and my husband and I are both like shouting into a toilet roll tube with that crap. Yeah, I think
in that case you're meant for rock and roll, Janey. That's perfect for rock and roll. I happen to be the lead vocalist. I'm not going to say singer in a band called Best Picture, and we've not done an awful lot recently. But last December we did support Hipsway 2 nights at St Luke's in Glasgow, and it was just the best fun. I mean, it is the best fun getting up there and performing. We were bricking it beforehand, but once you get onto that stage, your nerves do tend to melt away. Do you ever get stage fright?
No, I get really excited. I mean, the only time I've ever had real stage fright was when I was presenting a BAFTA award, and that guy, Sam Hew, the Outlander, was right behind me, and I was like, oh, hello. And Ashley's like, Mum, please don't. She was presenting the BAFTA with me. And all I could think is, this is going to be on the telly. I'm going to say something ridiculous. But I stuck to the script. And just as I was leaving, they went, don't stick to the script. Do what you want. And Ashley went, oh, fuck, why? And then we had a bit of a laugh. So that made me nervous. No, I don't get nervous going on stage, because I know that I'm really good with an audience. And I know that I'm one of those comedians that I think you're one of those writers. I think that's where we blend. I'm the kind of comedian that you're the kind of writer. If one thing doesn't work, I've got another thing. And if that doesn't work, I've got another thing. And if that doesn't work, there are some comedians who have just got this, and there's some writers who have just got this. But I'm one of these comedians that can go on stage and go, blah, blah, blah. And they go, huh? They go, change. This. What about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? So I think
that's really interesting, because I do think there's a lot of improvisation in what I do. People often think the crime novel must be really rigorously structured. The crime, the investigation, the resolution, the red herrings, all of this. And I just tend to, and a lot of crime writers do. I found this out through talking to lots of them down the years. A lot of crime writers just make it up as we go along. So I'm happy to sit down and start a 300-page novel with a few pages of notes, and maybe the idea for the first couple of scenes, and no idea where I'm going to go. I just start riffing, as it were. Once I've got those couple of scenes written, they'll take me to the next place. If the book has a place it wants me to go, I will follow the book to that place. And where the book wants to go is always more interesting than where I want or think it was.
Yes,
you know?
Comedy is like that. I can start a story, and then this bit here, I'll pop up in my head, and I'll say to myself, I'll tell that bit next, because that's reminded me of that. And that's very like, right, the crime novel. And then I'll go, that'll work. And then if they like that, that bit will work. So I never really get nervous. I get hyper excited. I mean,
I just trust now. I mean, after all these years, I trust that the novel knows that the novel will take me somewhere. If I don't know where it's going, the novel knows. So I can just relax a wee bit. Not too much, otherwise you get a bit lazy. But the latest one, the one that comes out in October, I guarantee I was 30 pages from the end and I still didn't know who done it. You know, writing the first draft. And I kept, if I showed you my notes as I was writing the book, you'd be going, but you kept changing your mind. I mean, I did keep changing my mind. And I always think, if I don't know who done it, probably the reader can't work it out either.
That's right. That book, the new book I'm writing, started off as one thing. And then I went to my wee pals, Shirley and East Kilbride. I sat in her kitchen and I started writing it. And like you say, I went, this book is fuck all to do with this. It's about this. And I had to phone the publisher up and go, guys, I'm changing the whole thing. If you don't like it, it's fine. I don't need the money. I don't care. But I'm still going to write this. This is what this book is about, not what we started doing with. And they were like, no, that's cool. Go for it. And I still not written it.
The other thing you're going to have to get used to once it's written out there is that every reader will have a different idea what the book is about. I had a book, a fairly recent rebus novel, and a friend of mine who's been a pal of mine since school days read it, and he said, oh Ian, this is a book about your sons leaving home. It's a book about you having said goodbye to both your sons that both moved out of the house. There was a lot of kind of parent-child or parent-surrogate-child relationships in the book. And it was probably subconsciously a way of me finding a way to deal with it. And it's what I've always done with writing. You know, when I was a wee kid sitting in my tiny wee 6 foot by 6 foot bedroom, scribbling down stories about space explorers and monsters and all sorts, I was trying to make sense of the world. And subconsciously, I was probably dealing with some of those demons. And that's why it's often been said crime writers would be fairly dangerous individuals if we didn't write all this stuff down. But the fact that we do get our demons out on the page means that we're lovely. We're lovely.
Have you ever killed somebody?
In real life?
Aye.
I wouldn't tell you that.
No. If you did, where would you?
I don't think I could. I don't think I could. I mean, I think I've got that moral core. I mean, you often you glibly say, "Oh, you know, I'd murder them or this or that." The drummer out in the meadows who plays drums from noon till midnight during the summer every night. If I had a gun, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't.
That's a really good point. I remember. I don't know if I should. Yeah, I should.
I go on. It's the time you murdered somebody. Go and tell us it. There's nobody here, Janey. It's just you and me.
No, when I was a kid, you know that I had been abused.
Yeah. You've written about that.
Yeah, I wrote about that. And my uncle was the man who abused me. So I remember, in about 1990, I said to my husband, I hate him and I want him dead. And I have a family that could have done that. He has. And he sat me down and he went, okay, let's talk about this. You really want him dead? And I went, yeah. I don't think the world needs child abuser. He went, so what separates you from him? And I'm like, don't become suddenly philosophical, oh barman from Glasgow. And he said, do you genuinely want to spend the rest of your life knowing that he's an abuser and you're a killer? Because that's what you're going to do. It can happen. It will happen really easily, but you need to know you did this. And is that who you really are? I'm like, no. So I took him to court and I got him put in jail, and I dealt with it that way. But there was a brief moment where I was like, yeah, I could cope with that. And he went, no, you couldn't, because that's not who you are. It's conscience. It's conscience.
Yeah. Is what it is. I mean, that's what Crime and Punishment is all about. Yeah. There's Raskolnikov kind of getting away with murder, except he doesn't, because he's inside of his head is his judge and executioner in a way. I
mean, it's bizarre that I'm obsessed with murder books because, you know, my mum was murdered. The guy who killed her had killed other women before, and he was the prime suspect in the Manchester Mary cases, and then he killed my mum, and then he got away with it. So I've always been obsessed, and he's dead now as well. And I've always been obsessed that if I could be a time traveller, I wouldn't go back and stop her from dying if I could. I'd go back and try and properly solve the crime. You know, when I see these crime and punishment programs on TV, like 60 years ago, Maribel Wilson was it. I'm like, my man was murdered in 1982, nobody cared. This is rubbish. And do you know what else I don't like about crime documentaries? They always say, Sarah was a beautiful woman. Everybody loved her. Surely they must have killed somebody that was a right arsehole at some point. Surely they weren't all good.
But history likes to, I mean, it's myth-making. It's myth-making is what it is.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary thing that, I mean, you probably don't know this, but I mean, James Ellroy, very well-known American crime writer, his mother was killed when he was young. And I think that's haunted him throughout his time as a crime writer from his very earliest books. The kind of memory of his mother is all, and he did eventually write a book about his mother's death, a non-fiction book, not a fiction book, a non-fiction book. But I mean, it's shaped the whole character. I mean, it's shaped him. And I mean, I do wonder how much of that is shaped. I mean, the book you're writing, the fiction book, isn't going to be a crime book. Did you say?
I'm not going to tell you, but you're nearly. That's weird. You psychological monster.
I'm not a psychological monster. It's just I know what fiction can be for. And I mean, it can be with dealing with your demons. It can be a form of exorcism. It can be a form of therapy. Whether you show it to anybody or not, and whether you publish it or not, all these things are feasible.
Really interesting. I never thought of that. I never put those two things together. But there you go.
It's the subconscious. It's the subconscious does it all for you. Subconscious. I think my wife sent me in a question saying, "Did you not like the way you decorated your office?" I thought I did a good job of this. I've been watching a lot of these things, Jane. I've been watching a lot of these online interviews now, and people have got really interesting things behind them. No, you. People have got really, and so I purposely put this kind of shelf here with some books and Yellow Submarine and an Alex Harvey mug, and there's Charlie Watts there, and there's some pictures of the Oxford Bar and stuff like that. My wife's gone, did you know, like, I've just done that. This is my office decorated, Miranda.
Ian,
This
can
is
you
what it
tell my
looks like.
husband? Can you tell my husband's got autism?
Yeah, just a wee bit. Just a wee bit.
That's what my husband decided would be for every single Zoom meeting. A blank. My husband's autism shapes a lot of his thinking and his way, and he's like, people don't want to look at stuff behind you, will distract them. This is his brain. Yeah. So he wants a blank thing behind me all the time, because he says if he was watching this, he would try and figure out what that was, and it would distract him because of the way he deals with his autism. So I quite like
and a previous one of these I was watching, and all the comments down the side of the screen from folk watching it were all, what's that behind, what is that a Star Trek thing? Is that something from Thunderbirds? What is that?
So he was right. It was right.
Yeah, no, it's true. It is distracting, but I like it all the same. And then sometimes you get the author with a big shelf of their books, and look, I've done it over there. That's a lot of my... No, that isn't done on purpose. This is just... I decided when we downsized a year ago, what to get rid of half the books, half the LPs, half the CDs, because we were moving to a much smaller place. And I decided I would keep one copy of each of my books in every language it had been translated into. Yeah. And my wife doesn't want them in the big flat. So that's what's on this shelf. This bookshelf here is one copy of each of my books in every single language it's been translated into. That have been sent. I mean, sometimes you don't get sent them. And the excess books go to charity.
My book, Handstands in the Dark, has sold out again, and I'm waiting in 700 copies coming for Random House. They still haven't arrived, and I can't tell you how annoyed that's made my poor man, because every single day I get 700 emails going, where's the book we bought back in May? I've got their money, but I can't give them books, driving us all. Every single day, like, God, please send the books. We're getting there slowly. As soon as they arrive, but like you, I've only got one copy of my book in this house. And here's the weird thing is, Ashley and my husband have never read them. They have never read the book.
That was their decision. Their decision.
Yeah, because there's a lot of painful stuff in there.
Yeah, a lot of personal stuff. I mean, it is a book. I mean, this is the book you wrote about the abuse and about your uncle.
And growing up in the East End and becoming a barmaid, and there's nothing about comedy in it at all. Nothing about comedy. Ian, I'm going to ask you to check your watch because I don't have one.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm keeping an eye on it, Janey. We're fine. We've got 8 minutes left. 8 minutes left before we release these people. But remember to come back at 9:30 for 2 crime writers and a microphone. The final event. It's going to be hilarious. Even funnier than Janey Godley, if that is at all possible. Who knows?
Look at my hair.
Listen, I know it's lovely. You don't even had it cut yet. My wife trimmed a wee bit of mine. That's all. I was lucky. I got a haircut just before the lockdown.
I can tie the knot. I look like one of these sister wives that's got 4 husbands, and I'm number 3 of the wife. I'm
not going to say Chewbacca. But maybe from the back, you'd be a wee bit Chewbacca.
I think I could be one of these sister wives. I would love it if there was 4 other women to do the shite I have to do. I think I could do that. Like, one wife did the cooking, one wife looked after my man, one wife did all the paperwork, and I could lie in my bed and sleep.
And I've actually seen your daughter do a very good Handmaid's Tale impression as well.
Yes.
Look, if you've not seen it, folks, look for it online. It's hilarious. Even Margaret Atwood likes it.
She did. Ashley burst into tears that day when she saw that Margaret Atwood had retweeted it because that's her favourite author. And one of the things I want to say, we've not got much time left, was my mammy was a fabulous, like most working class women, they were great readers. And we could never afford books. So I used to get sent up to other people's houses to borrow books. So my mammy would say, away up to Jenny McGowan's and get me a book. I don't want a fucking love book or a cowboy book. I want a book about murder. I used to think back and go, wow, Annie, you should have read that book there. But I have been a voracious reader my whole life as well, and so has Ashley. My husband, who's got autism, can't read or write at all. He's got very, because of the dyslexia associated with that. But he discovered that the local library gives you free audiobooks. And if the local libraries in Scotland left my husband to it, he would organise all their books for them, because that's basically what he spends his day doing, going into the library and going, they've only got book 3 of 7. What's the point of that? Email them. And I'm like, please don't make me email the library. So yeah, that's my
parents weren't great readers. I mean, they would buy a book sometimes for the summer holidays, but there weren't lots and lots of books in the house. There were a few. But whenever we went to a relative's house or we were visiting somebody, I was always diving into the bookshelves to see what books they had. And I did haunt the local library. There was a wee tiny library in Cartondale, and I just haunted it. And one of the biggest moments of my life was when I got told you can go from the children's section to the adult
Yes,
section.
I remember
Thank
that.
God. And I wasn't old enough to go. I couldn't get into the Rex cinema to see adult films, but I could suddenly read The Godfather or
That's
Jaws or The Exorcist or
brilliant
something.
memory.
And I
Chelsea
just,
Library was a big Victorian building that smelled of that wood and polish.
yeah.
And I remember going in and she said, you can now go into the adult section. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I remember standing there looking at all these books going, oh my God. And you know what a lovely memory is they got me back to read my book in the Shettleston Library. And I could see that wee Janey in the corner somewhere going, I've got an adult book, finally. Yeah.
I mean, our library was also famous for having lots of back issues of Amateur Photographer, which of course was full of topless ladies.
Yeah.
So there was sex education mixed in there with everything else, as well as reading The Godfather, which also counted as sex education, I think.
Yeah,
when I was 12.
absolutely.
Anyway, let's not go there. We've got a few minutes left, Janey. I was going to tell you one story because how did this come up? Well, having one copy of all your books. Years and years and years ago when I was living in France, I wrote a book called The Hanging Garden. And it had lines from songs by The Cure on it, which brings us back to music again. And I thought, oh, how do I get permission? I've no idea how you get permission to quote from songs. But I had a few albums by The Cure, so I wrote to the fan club because the address was on some of the albums. And months later, I got a phone call from a woman who said, oh, I'm the manager of The Cure. I've discussed this with Bob Robert Smith, the singer-songwriter of The Cure. And he says, great, you can use the lyrics of his song, but there will be a fee. Now, this was long before the books were successful. We were poor as church mice. I said, oh, Christ, what's the fee? She went, a signed copy of the book when it's finished.
Oh.
And I went, brilliant, that's great, thanks very much. I put the phone down. I thought, oh, Christ, I never got any contact details. And this is in the days before 1471 or whatever. I was in France.
Yeah.
I didn't even have the name of the woman who just phoned me. So he never got his signed copy. So years later, when the book was eventually re-released in paperback, I wrote a wee essay at the start and I mentioned this. And somebody showed it to Robert Smith and his management got in touch and said, right, you bugger, where's my signed book? So I went to my shelf and got hardback of The Hanging Garden and sent it to Robert Smith, thanks very much and all that. Sent it to him. Then realised that was my only copy of my own book. And I know, and by now it was quite a collector's item. There wasn't a huge print run on the hardback of that. So I had to go to a shop in London, a kind of collector's shop, and he gave me a copy. When they heard the story, they said, look, don't pay us for it, just take it. That was Goldsborough Books in London, so God bless him for that. And God bless Robert Smith.
Yeah.
He didn't know who the hell I was. I've never met the man, but he just said,
what
yeah.
Great story.
Quote from the songs, all you like, just send me a signed book. Has he ever read it? Has he ever read it? No.
I think that's a good story for us to end on.
It is, and I'm just checking the time, Janey. It's 20:58. I'm just going to have a very last, we've got 2 minutes, I'm just going to check the Q&A. Do you know where your books will go, Ian, geographically, like the A9 book? You set a book up the A9 to do with killings, or the Bible John book. This book, the one that's coming out in October, I'll tell you very quickly, revolves around Rebus's daughter, who's been kind of estranged from for quite a long time. She lives way up on the north coast of Scotland, way up, around about Tongue and Durness. So Rebus, on page 6 of the book, leaves Edinburgh to go and help her because she's got some trouble, and he never returns. So the whole book, from Rebus's perspective, is him way up north, way out of his comfort zone, way out of my comfort zone, far north of Scotland, leaving Siobhan Clarke and Malcolm Fox back in Edinburgh with a different case they're working on. So there are no visits to the Oxford Bar in this book. There's very little of Rebus's Edinburgh in this book. So let's wait and see. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed taking him out of his comfort. I was going to set the book in Tongue, and I drove up to Tongue and I looked at it and thought, no. This isn't right. This is too big. It's got a police station, it's got hotels, it's got shops. No, it needs somewhere smaller, more like a kind of hamlet. So I invented a wee village up there. So there is no. So Tongue, sorry, didn't make it. The police station gets a mention in passing, but that's it. Listen, Janey, God bless you for doing this.
Thank you so
Janey
much.
was asked to do this. She was going, well, I'm a comedian. What do I know about interviewing a crime writer? But it's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank
and I've
you.
learned a lot, Janey.
It.
And from what I'm seeing from the Zoominar webinar chat, everybody's enjoyed it. So thanks very much, folks.
Thank you.
Stick around, and thanks again for supporting the Trussell Trust.